Hello again everybody, I am back with another video. I'm here with a knitting tutorial for you all today and we actually have a knitting project. So I haven't actually done one of these on my channel yet. I've only done knitting stitches and how to knit for beginners, but today we're going to combine a few things. We're going to learn something new and we're going to have some fun and get knitting. So today we're creating a cowl scarf type thing. So for this tutorial I have 2 balls of this chunky yarn. This is Lion Brand Yarn Hometown. I will leave a link in the description box below to the yarn that I'm using. I'm using this grey and as I said I'm using 2 balls of this, so 2 balls of any chunky yarn really. I'm then using a pair of circular needles, which are actually 8mm needles, because this yarn calls for I think 8 till 9mm needles. It's a little bit less than a chunky yarn. I'm using the corresponding needles in the 8mm, and they are circular needles, so make sure you grab a pair of those. I have a little bit of spare yarn that I've just made into a slip knot as a stitch marker, just so that we know where we begin and where we end our round, and then a pair of scissors, and you will need a darning needle to sew in your ends at the very end. So without further ado, we're going to begin. I'm going to teach you how to cast on. It's really easy. Then we're using the seed stitch today, so if you haven't done the seed stitch, I will leave a link in my description box below, because I have done a tutorial on that a few weeks ago I think. And then we're going to cast off. It's a super easy tutorial and super quick and fun. So without further ado, we shall cast on. Okay then, so to begin our cast on we need to leave quite a bit of tail, and it's better to go more tail than less tail so that you can chop that off at the end. We're going to make a slip knot, so make a loop and pull through your loop. You can do this in whichever way that you prefer. And then you're just going to take your circular needles and you're going to do a cast on in the exact same way as you do with ordinary needles. If you've never used circular needles, they're really easy to use, so don't worry too much. So you're going to pull tight a little bit, and then you're just going to cast on in the exact same way. We are going to cast on 55 stitches, or any odd number, so I'd probably go from a range of about 50 to 70. You need an odd number for this cast on, but I'm going to go around 55 because I want a little bit of a tighter cowl. If you want a little bit of a loopier one, you can go for a little bit more. So to cast on, I'm using the long tail cast on, so make a gun shape with your fingers. Oh, there we go, and grab the yarn. Then you're going to go underneath your first loop, underneath your finger loop, and back through. If you are a very beginner to knitting, I will also leave a beginner knitting tutorial where I teach you the very basics of how to cast on, how to hold your needles, and things like that in the description box down below. So go ahead and work your cast on, and what these will do will just travel down your needle onto kind of the plastic ring bit of the circular needles. So you're basically using your circular needles in the exact same way as you use your straight needles, but you're just kind of working it around. You don't really notice it when you're actually knitting that much. It can be a little bit of a struggle. I've struggled with circular needles quite a bit, but for this one it's super easy. Okay then, I'm going to leave you to that. I'm going to cast on my 55 stitches and I will meet you back when I have finished doing that. Okay then, so I've just casted on my 55 stitches and this is what mine's looking. So I have a full needle of cast on stitches and then a little bit of empty room on my circular needle, but that's absolutely fine. So we're going to start knitting now, but I'm just first going to pop on my stitch marker, which, as I've said, is just a spare piece of yarn in a different colour. You want to make sure that your work isn't twisted, so what I like to do is just lay it out and just making sure that my work isn't twisted. And of course you have the empty needle that you're about to work onto in your right hand, and then obviously the stitches on the left hand needle as well. So once you've checked all of those things out, we are ready to begin. The first round's super simple because the rounds aren't actually joined. We only start to join the rounds of the very last stitch of round number 1. So now we're ready to begin. So we're going to start with a knit stitch, just like usual. So working a knit stitch. And then this stitch, I think I mentioned quickly, we're actually going to do the seed stitch, which is alternating between knit and purls depending on what stitch you've done before it and what stitch you've done below it and all of that. So once you've worked a knit stitch, you're going to bring your yarn to the front and work a purl stitch, like so, and then to the back again, work a knit stitch, and then to the front again, work a purl stitch. And you're going to work that all the way around for round number 1. As I said, if you've never worked the seed stitch before, you may be able to follow along from this video, but I will leave a more in-depth video tutorial in the description box below. So like that, all the way along, working knit, purl, depending on what stitch you've done before it. So I've just worked my knit stitch, so I'm now going to work a purl stitch. So go ahead and work that all the way around for round number 1, and I will meet you back and show you something a little bit different that we do at the end. Okay then, so I've just finished round number 1 and this is how mine is looking. So again, make sure you're not twisted. You can see that I'm at the end of round number 1 because my stitch marker is here, so all I'm going to do is slide that over onto my other needle, and you can do that at the beginning of each round just so that you don't forget what stitch you're on. So now we're back to round number 1, and what we're going to do is join the stitches together. So this is the first time you kind of need to be aware of it, and kind of the only time you need to be aware that you're joining the stitches together. And then from now on, every time that you end the round, they'll be joined together anyway, and all you need to do is move the stitch marker over. It'll become a lot more clearer as you move through the piece. So what my first stitch is a purl stitch. I know this because I've got my little V, which means that I worked a knit stitch last time. And because we alternate between them with the knit and purl, we work a purl into the knit and a knit into the purl stitches. So I know that my first stitch is going to be a purl. So all I'm going to do is bring my yarn to the front like so. And you're just going to work into it exactly the same way as you would do if it was on a straight needle or even on a circular needle, just exactly the same, you'd work a purl. So go ahead and work that purl stitch and then bring your yarn to the back because the next stitch you're going to work is a knit stitch. And you have basically joined your round. That is exactly the way that you do it. It's really, really simple. You just continue working. What you will need to do is, as you can see in mine, there's a little bit of a gap. Because we didn't join from the very start, we joined from basically row number 2. What you'll need to do is just take your tail end of your work and at the end just sew it to the first stitch of the round, just so that that gap closes up nicely. You can join from the very beginning, but I find that it's easier to join in row number 2 and then just sew that gap closed because it's very small. You have the tail end anyway, so it's just easier to close those together like so. And then you're going to work row 2 in the exact same way, so you're going to work the seed stitch. So into your purl stitches, you're going to work knit stitches, and into your knit stitches, you're going to work purl stitches. So my next stitch is a knit stitch. I'm just going to go ahead and work that, and then a purl stitch, and then a knit stitch. And that is what you're going to go ahead and do for row number 2. So go ahead and work row number 2 in the exact same way, and I will meet you back for row number 3. Okay then, so I've just finished round number 2, and you can see I'm at the round because my stitch marker, so I'm just going to slide that over. And you can see now that because we've joined our round, we're just going to work straight away a knit stitch. Because our last stitch was a purl, we can just easily work a knit stitch into that stitch, like so. And that is how you continue the round, just in the exact same way as the rest of the round. So I'm actually going to leave you here because it's just a simple pattern repeat now. Every single round is exactly the same, working seed stitch into every single round. The amount of rounds you do is kind of preference. I can usually get around 30 to 40 rounds with 2 balls of yarn. I will tell you at the end exactly how mine is, but it kind of just depends on how thick that you want your cowl. If you want it a little bit chunkier, obviously go for a bigger number. I try and get as many rounds as I can. A good average is about 35, so anywhere 30 to 40. Just keep trying it, but again, it's a little bit of preference. I will keep working this up, and I will come back to you when I finish my rounds and tell you exactly how many I've done if you want to base it off of that. So you continue watching if you want to check that out. And then all we've got to do is cast off and sew in our ends, and then we're finished. So I'm going to go ahead and work my rounds, and then I will come back to you when I have finished my knitted cowl. Okay then everybody, so I've worked up my piece. This is almost 2 balls. I've got a little bit left of my second ball. I've worked 35 rounds, so if you are kind of following along with me, or you just don't really have a clue how thick you kind of want it, this is about 35 rounds, and it's where I am happy with. You can obviously go thicker, you can go thinner, it's totally your preference. So now we're going to cast off. So I've just come to the end of my round here, and we're going to cast off. We cast off in the exact same way. It can get a little bit tight because obviously you're decreasing the stitches on the round, but it's basically the same exact way. So what we're going to do is begin by decreasing. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue with the seed stitch pattern. So I've got my first stitch, which is a knit, so I'm going to work a purl, like so, and then my second stitch is a purl, so I'm going to work a knit, and then all I'm going to do is bring the first stitch that I've worked over the second stitch that I've worked, like so. You want to try and keep this quite loose because casting off can get a little bit tight and it can just affect your work. So now I'm going to work a purl because my next stitch was a knit, so I'm going to work a purl, and then from the back to the front, sorry, working casting off. So you're going to continue doing this all the way around. As I said, because you're working in a round, this is what's going to happen. You're going to get gaps and it's going to become quite tight. But if you just continue working in the same way as you have been doing, it should be okay. And then, like we did at the very beginning, we've got a little bit of a gap just because the rounds don't completely join. So what we have to do is kind of do a little bit of sewing, but I'll show you that when we've come to the end. So you can see my work is casting off here. I've got my first stitch over here and then the stitches that I'm working on. So I'm going to go ahead and cast off my whole entire piece in this way, and then I will meet you back when I have finished that. Okay then, so I'm just on my last stitch, which is actually a purl. So I'm just going to go ahead and purl that stitch. Then take the back one over the front one. Okay then, so all I'm going to do now is leave a little bit of a tail, not too long, but a little bit of one just so that I can sew that in. And I'm going to kind of make what we do in crochet like a slip knot, so I'm going to remove that, and through the loop that I already have, I'm just going to pull that yarn through like so, just so that it's a nice and secure knot. So now my needles are free, so we're just going to put those to the side, and we have basically finished the cowl. We just need to sew in the ends. So what I mentioned at the start is you can see that these don't completely join, so I'm going to use this tail and I'm going to sew kind of this side to this side like so, so they're completely and utterly joined. And then at the bottom, like I mentioned at the beginning, these also aren't completely joined, so I'm going to join this one to this one so that they're completely joined. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, basically sewing in your ends to complete your work. Okay then, so there I have just sewn in my ends, and now your cowl is complete. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video today. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, leave me a like and comment down below what future videos you'd like to see. Also comment down below what colours you made these beautiful cowls in. Subscribe so you never miss a video. I'm making a video weekly at the moment, knitting and crochet videos, so please subscribe and join our wonderful little community. Thank you all so much for watching. Also, if you get the chance to follow me on Instagram, I will leave a link in the description box down below. I'm at hooks.andneedles1. You can keep up to date with all of my crochet projects and knitting projects there as well. Thank you all, and I'll see you very soon with another video. Bye!